What is happening, guys? Welcome back to the channel. We got leaks and leaks and leaks that we need to fix in this video. So finally almost ready to kind of get this FJ40 finalized. We do have a fair amount of work to do still, but we're getting very close. One thing we need to tackle is all the leaks. So front axle seal's leaking. That involves stripping the entire axle down to the inside because the inner seal inside the differential is leaking. So we need to take apart the entire axle. We got a leaking transmission pan and we got a leaking hydro boost unit. So we're gonna tackle all three of those today. We might do a few other things as well, but that's the main goal for this video. So first things first, we're gonna start with the hard part, axle. So like I said, this thing needs to come completely apart. So both sides, hubs, everything needs to come off. Then we need to pull the diff cover. We need to pull the whole carrier out. We need to pull the axle shafts out just to get access into the inside for that seal. So that's what we're starting with. Let's get the axle done, then we'll jump on transmission. I am still waiting for the hydro boost seal, so hopefully those will show up soon enough we can strip that thing apart. Now the funny thing is, before I even put that in, I actually saw a thread about the very common leak that mine is having, and I almost did the seal, but I decided I didn't see any oil in it. I didn't notice any leaks when I pulled it off of the truck that it was on. So I decided I'm gonna chance it. And well, that didn't work out too well. So now we got to pull it back off, which honestly is it's pretty easy to pull off. It's not that big of a deal to replace that seal. Well, there's our problem right there. That's the problem seal. Well, I don't really see an issue with it, but it was leaking a lot. I mean, it's still sitting there dripping. You can see right there just with the fluid in the axle tube. So we're gonna get both these seals out. You can see, I'll show you guys after actually. I'll pull them out and then show you the difference between these seals that I used and the new updated seals that apparently are supposed to work better. So here's the two seals. This is what I originally had with the rebuild kit that I got with that axle. You can see that is, I mean, that's a factory seal. That's what came out of this axle. But this is, I guess, just some sort of updated seal. I don't know, it's supposed to work better. All right, we got this pan off. Looks like I found the main source of the problem. It looks like somebody over torqued these bolts and it pushes up the pan right here around the bolt holes. So what I'm just gonna do is just take a ball peen hammer and kind of tap those down to where they're flat. These really don't take much torque at all, or you do screw up these pans. I mean, they're super thin. I got a new gasket here, which is an actual OEM gasket. It's an actual GM part. So right there's a part number, GM. So that should seal it up. Once we get this pan flat, that should seal it up. Well, it's been overnight. We filled this thing up yesterday and we don't have any leaks yet. So I got high hopes that we got that thing sealed up. Next couple things we got to do. I'm still waiting for the Hydro Boost seal. So while we're waiting for that, I got this kit here for the front and rear diff breathers. This is literally identical to the ARB, and it's like half the price on Amazon. So instead of spending 80 bucks, I just opted for the $40 one. It's so simple. It's just a little screen inside of here and a couple fittings. So not that big of a deal if it's not as nice as ARB, but either way, we gotta do that. And then I want to figure out limit straps in the rear. You guys know when I got these drive lines, the rear is just at such a sharp angle. I got really short straps in here right now, but it was binding with the longer straps. One thing I want to try anyway, is adding a strap in the center just for driveline. Obviously we'll still have the articulation, but having a center strap is just going to stop it from, when we throw it on the lift or whatever, it's going to stop that driveline from binding, but we still should have our full articulation with side to side with axle moving like this. So kind of funny story, actually. I got a few comments on the video where I put these drive shafts in. People were suggesting doing a center limit strap. Now, it was probably a year ago when I first got started on this build, I knew we were gonna have a super short rear drive line. I was just like brainstorming fixes, and I actually thought about doing a center strap. I did some research to see if it was even a thing, if people even do it. I couldn't find any people doing a center strap. So I don't know. I kind of honestly, when I had this issue arise, I completely spaced it until you guys actually commented. So thanks for the comments. Like I said, always, you guys help me out with this build. All the comments, I read all the comments. Some of them are very, very helpful. I'm not a professional. I'm just a redneck out here trying to figure this out. So drop your comments. If you guys see me doing something wrong or have any suggestions, feel free to drop a comment, but that's what we're gonna try. I'm gonna throw my big limit straps back on so this axle is at full droop, and we're gonna just jack the axle up to where the drive shaft isn't binding. And then I have these shorter straps that are on it right now. I'm thinking we could use one of those for the center. If not, we may have to order one, but I think one of these we can make it work for the center. So let's figure that out. Let's figure out our diff breathers. Once we get in our Hydro Boost seals, we'll fix that, and that should hopefully that's the last leak we got to figure out. All right, guys, we got the vents in for the axles. You can see the fitting that they gave us did fit into the front housing. However, the rear is set up a little bit different on this Sterling. So it's kind of the brake splitter here with the vent tied in. So I just got a little adapter and made it work that way. So we are good to go. This limit strap is way too short. So I had to order up a 14-inch. That's an 11-inch. So it's a little short for now, but we got that whole mount welded in. This one I just threaded right into this mount here, so should be plenty beefy. I think that's really gonna help with having our long straps still for flexing, but this is gonna save our driveline. So I think that's really gonna work out really, really good. Well, unfortunately, I cannot close the hood with the engine cover on. The engine cover, you guys know, you saw it probably sits almost, I don't know, an inch and a half above this strut brace here, or this, shock brace. It's hitting the hood, so that kind of sucks. We can't run that, but either way, I mean, it's not a huge deal to me. But we got Hydro Boost back together, back on. We got to go drive this thing, make sure all these leaks are good. The axle was just sitting here dripping before. Now that it's back together, I don't see any drips at all. So should be good with axle. We got to drive this thing. Like I said, or like you guys saw when the first time I drove it, we didn't have seats, we didn't have a shifter. It was just an absolute nightmare to drive. So now that we got an interior, I think it's going to be a lot better to drive. So let's get it fired up, get it warmed up, and just go tool around the field a little bit and see how it does. Well, we're running. We're looking good so far. I'm not seeing anything out of the Hydro Boost. Axle's definitely not leaking. And nothing out of the tranny yet. The tranny was kind of slow to leak. So we got new leaks though. The fuel, something's leaking under here. I don't know if it's that same line that I already fixed like twice. Something's leaking under the seat, and then we popped a coolant leak, as you can see here. Definitely coming from here. I'm hoping it's just a loose hose clamp. So I'm gonna crank that down, wash all the coolant off, and see if that'll help. It looks like it's coming out of the hose clamp, or the actual hose. Hopefully not that fitting. So we'll see if that works, and then we got to get in the shop and try to figure out that fuel leak. Well, as soon as you turn the fuel pump on with the key here, you can see it is spraying out of the fitting going into from here into here. I even put some thread sealant on there and it's still leaking, so I'm gonna have to pull that off, figure out a better way to seal that up. Alright, third time around. This time I actually used a new fitting and a different kind of sealant. This is like the third sealant I've tried. Let's turn the pump on, see if it'll work. Last time it was dripping right away. I don't see anything coming out yet. So I'm gonna let the pressure sit in this line and see if it'll hold. Well guys, we're out messing around. The leaks are fixed. We got coolant leak fixed. Fuel leak seems to be fixed with that new fitting. But this thing needs work. Something with suspension needs work. It's got so much body roll. When I built the suspension, I did a ton of research on link suspension. I set it up to where everybody says is pretty decent for body roll. I need to go back through all my numbers and recheck everything. And then you guys saw when I set up the coilover springs, the spring rates. I did that just like a ton of people do. I feel like the spring rate is way too soft. I mean, you hit the brake and it just dives. You turn and you just a little slight turn and the whole rig just wants to roll over. I tried to go up on a little stump you guys saw. That was in 2-wheel drive. That could have something to do with it, but still, the entire front end was just lifting up like it wanted to just roll over. So I don't know, I need to make some phone calls. I need to find someone that knows about these link suspensions. Obviously, I could do a sway bar and that would help, but I think that's kind of more of a band-aid. I need to figure out what is going on with, I don't know, I feel like it's spring rate, but with the spring rates, if I were to jump up in spring rate, all I think that would do is lift the vehicle more. I don't want to do that unless I get, maybe if I get a shorter spring with a heavier spring rate, maybe that would help. I mean, you can tell just looking at it right here, I just parked, just going around a little bit of a corner, and you can see how much is leaning. Like, you just barely turn the wheel and the front end just dives down. I just feel like that spring rate it just feels way too soft. I don't know. I mean, you can tell this whole side's just leaning over. I gotta figure something out with that. Well guys, after talking to a few people, I think I might have found the problem, and it has something to do with the dual rate nuts that are on the coilover. So initially when I set these things up, I did all my research, and I couldn't really find a whole lot on those dual rate adjusters. The info I did find, people were saying to just throw them like 3 or 4 inches above the slider at ride height. I have them at 2.5 inches right now, and I think that's just way too high. Now, as far as these springs go, I have a 250-pound spring on the bottom and 125 on the top. When you combine those two rates, you actually get an 83 inch-pound rate, dual rate with both the springs. I honestly don't know how it works. Some sort of magic happens and you get an 83 inch-pound. Obviously, that is way too soft. So a lot of people suggested I bring those nuts all the way down to like a 1/2 inch from the slider so that you get a little bit of plush butt as soon as it starts to kind of want to dive down or anything, it hits a slider, the bottom spring activates, and you get that 250 inch-pound spring rate, and that will help it not dive and not, you know, with all the body roll. I think that's what we got to do. Shop, I can already tell that is way better. First corner still leads a little bit. That is way better though, and it's not just bouncing off of the bump stops like it was before. Out here in the field, just these little bumps, I'd be just constantly smacking off the bump stops. It's way better now. Once we get this thing done, it still may need a sway bar in the rear, but that made a huge difference.
Don't forget to circle the name under Austin Niemela.